What do you think is the biggest change that you've seen in medicine since you graduated?
Oh, I think by a long shot, the technology that has been developed since we got out of school. I can remember when I came to work for Tom Guilfoyle, people were still using fluoroscopy, and I can remember Dick Ott hunching down over a pet and putting an intramedullary pin in a leg and just frying his face and that stuff.
And fingers, yeah.
And Tom was using the same thing, and I said, Tom, you know, if we'd take that unit out from under this Formica top table and put it on a stand, we could take x-rays with it. And so we started doing that. They weren't the greatest quality, of course, but they were at least diagnostic, and then, of course, as time went on. But things like that, and I can remember Chuck Root calling me one day and saying that he was going to start doing MRIs on dogs.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, do you think there'll be a demand for it, Chuck? Sure there will. I think at that time it cost the client about $900 or something like that, and he was right. People, if it's available, they'll find a way.
Yeah, it's always amazing to me, you know, we think that people aren't going to pay for something, but they don't bat an eye a lot of times when, because it's their animal and they care a lot about it.
Yeah, we tend to prejudge, or at least I did all the time, prejudge my clients. Like I had this young couple come in with a dog that just struggled to even get up on her feet, and her hips looked like a couple of pieces of cauliflower, and that were trying to fit into a socket that was nowhere near going to hold them. And she just had the most severe hip dysplasia I can imagine, and I explained to him what it was, and here's a couple in their 20s just trying to get started, you know, and he said, well, what are the options? And I said, well, you know, we can medicate, try to make her comfortable, and there are surgeries that can be done, and I said the ultimate would be hip replacement, but I said, you know, it's way out of reach, and so I finished talking to him, and he said, now let's get back to that hip replacement.
Yeah.
And they went ahead and had it done.
Yeah, big surprise, you don't think?
Yeah, they really do, and I'm sure that it put a strain on their budget, but they were willing to go that far for that pet.
Yeah, that's what's important for them.
Yeah.
Well, now to put you on the spot for a second, what do you think has been your most best contribution to the veterinary profession?
Oh boy, I don't know. I guess, you know, I've always tried to do whatever I could to support organized veterinary medicine, and you know, volunteer for committees and things like that. And that was kind of made very plain to me when I went to work for Tom Guilfoyle. He said, now I want you to understand one thing. He said, if you work for me, you're going to be active in the Seattle Association, the State Association. I could never be active in the National because he was the district representative for AVMA, so when the AVMA conventions would come around, he'd take off and leave me running the practice. So. But that was, I think, you know, if there is a contribution involved in that, I think that's probably what I've tried to do anyway.
Well, and I know you've also kind of carried that same philosophy on. I know your associate, Dr. John Kelly, was very active in the American Animal Hospital Association,
right.
So that carried on. So
yeah, John's done a great job with AHA. I guess they don't like us to call it AHA anymore.
Yeah, well.
AHA.
Yes. And I guess the last question I have for you, do you have one priceless story you'd like to share?
Again, there's so many, it's hard. I was reminded of a story the other day that it's humorous in a way, but it wasn't very humorous at the time that it happened. But I ran into a lady just the other night, and it was at a cocktail party thing, and we were visiting back and forth, and she said, I'm not sure you remember who I am. And so I didn't really, you know, I didn't recognize her, and she said, there used to be a guy in Seattle named Max Pillar that had a big orchestra, and he was very well known all around Seattle, and she was his stepdaughter. And she brought her dog in to board at our hospital. And at the time, we had this giant big rockery back behind the hospital. I would judge it was probably over 10 feet off the ground and just a sheer rock wall. And the kids would take the dogs out behind the hospital in this enclosed yard and let them run and things like that. So this kid that was working for us came running into, and I can't remember the dog's name now, but he said, "The dog is gone." And I said, "What do you mean gone?" "Went over the rock wall." And this is about a 15-pound miniature poodle, and it climbed that rock wall and left. And it took off down 15th, which is one of the busier streets in Seattle.
Mm-hmm.
And I used to ride my bike a lot from home to work. It was only about 2 miles, and so I ran in and grabbed my bike and took off chasing that dog on my bicycle. And it went down 15th and turned and went up the Magnolia Bridge. These people lived in Magnolia, and I was having a real tough time keeping up with it, especially with going up that bridge, and I got behind a little bit. And finally, I could remember vaguely where they lived, because in Magnolia everybody knows everybody. And so I finally went down toward their house, and I see this little dog, and it ran into their house and made it home safely. But this lady, she was laughing about it when she reminded me of the story, but she didn't think it was funny at that time.
No,
nor did I. But
no.
It's crazy things like that. She thinks it's really humorous now. And
Well, you can always laugh about near tragedies and stuff like that, you know, and that's the human aspect of being in business and so forth. Sometimes
Yeah.
things happen out of your control, and you just kind of go, "Oh my gosh." You know?
oh yeah,
Yeah.
what would have happened if that dog had been hit by a car, or you know,
yeah.
how it made its way all the way home?
That'd be a better than worse nightmare, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Well, I sure appreciate you coming here today and sharing your time with us. And
My pleasure.
okay.
You know you're getting old when they start calling in to interview you about history and things.
That's true. That's true. I think I'll be next in about the next year or two.
Yeah.